In the previous video, we were talking about the Ghadar movement and we were just beginning to talk about it. And we said three events influenced the course of the Ghadar movement. The first one was the arrest and escape of Lala Hardayal. The second one was the Komagata Maru incident. The third one was the outbreak of the First World War. Lala Hardayal was arrested on 25th March 1914 on the grounds of his anarchist activities. But everybody knew that the British government was behind the arrest. Remember, this was in US. So Hardayal was arrested in US. He was released on bail and Lala then disappeared completely. His active association with the Ghadorite movement thus came to an abrupt end. The second incident is the Komagata Maru incident, right? The Komagata Maru was a ship that was headed to Canada. Canada had imposed strict immigration laws that forbade entry to all but those who had made a continuous journey from India. This restriction proved effective, for no shipping line offered this service at that time. So, no Indian who had not made a continuous journey from India would be allowed into Canada. In November 1913, the Canadian Supreme Court had allowed 35 Indians who had not made a continuous journey entry into Canada. So, emboldened by this decision of the Canadian Supreme Court, a total of 376 passengers from Southeast Asia, and East Asia began their journey towards Vancouver. So, the Supreme Court of Canada once allowed people who had not journeyed continuously from India to enter Canada. Emboldened by this, more people thought they could also do it. And they all boarded a ship called Komagata Maru. The ship became the subject of great debate. The Indian press in Punjab warned of serious consequences if the ship was not allowed into Canada. The Canadian press, on the other hand, called this the mounting Oriental invasion because people were coming from South Asia, Southeast Asia, and East Asia. So, this region is called as the Orient. So, they called this as the mounting Oriental invasion. Rebellion against the British in India was threatened if Komagata Maru was not allowed to embark in Canada and if those members were not allowed into the country. None of it mattered. The Komagata Maru was soon forced out of Canadian waters. Before it reached Yokohama in Japan, World War I broke out. The British government ordered that the passengers should not be allowed to disembark anywhere, not even the places they got on from, but only at Calcutta. So now the British government was adamant that these people should return, and it is not even that they can return to the points where they had boarded, but they should return only to Calcutta. This oppressive and inhumane order triggered protests at every port the ship touched. It triggered a wave of resentment and anger among the Indian community, and this became the occasion for anti British mobilization. On arrival at the Baj port in Calcutta, the police provoked the crowd on purpose, and this led to a clash. The harassed and irate passengers resisted the police. 18 innocent passengers were killed. This is after these passengers went from South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia to Canada and then returned back to Calcutta. They met with the police and then 18 innocent passengers were killed. 202 were arrested. A few succeeded in escaping. The Komagata Maru is but an example of the atrociousness of the British rule in India. The outbreak of World War I led to a lot of activity within the Ghadorite movement. Prominent leaders were sent to persuade Indians living in Japan, Philippines, China, Hong Kong, Malaya, Singapore, and Burma to return home and join the rebels. The British government in India was completely informed of the Ghadar plans, which were hardly a secret anyways. They waited for the Ghadarites with an ordinance named Ingress into India Ordinance. Each of the immigrants on return was scanned and only the safe ones were allowed to enter. Out of 8,000 odd people who returned from abroad, only 5,000 were allowed to proceed. Many were restricted to their villages, some were interned, and precautionary measures were taken against a few others. Many came from Colombo and South India and reached Punjab without being detected. But even after this arduous journey, the Ghadarites were met with disappointment as they found the atmosphere in Punjab to be as morbid as ever. The Punjabis in India were in no mood to join the romantic adventure of the Ghadarites. To make matters worse, the chief Diwan of the Khalsa professed loyalty to the British crown and helped the government track the Ghadarites down. The Ghadarites were soon leaderless. They appealed to Raj Bihari Bose to take up leadership. He did so in January 1915. However, the British administration cracked down upon the Ghadarites and Bose somehow escaped. The Ghadar movement was crushed. The government did not stop there. It assumed its usual savage and brutal stance and hung 45 revolutionaries to death. Over 200 revolutionaries were awarded lifetime imprisonments. The Ghadar movement holds its own spot in the history of the Indian national movement as it brought immense pressure on the British dominions across the world. It helped in sensitizing Indians across the world of the state of affairs India was in. It brought leaders from across the world and across religions to cooperate in the fight for freedom. The Ghadar movement helped in deepening the nationalist consciousness. But the Ghadar movement still suffered from some weaknesses. They underestimated the amount of organizational, ideological, strategic, and financial preparation that was necessary to carry out the task they had set for themselves. They had managed to mobilize only a few thousand ideas. The extent of the reach of their ideas and ideology needed to be greater. The greatest tragedy, however, was the hanging of 45 leaders and 200 more lifetime imprisonments. This effectively left Punjab leaderless for the years to come. If these leaders had remained active, the effect they could have had on the political scenario in Punjab would have been drastically different. This is not just wild speculation, for the few surviving Ghadarites helped lay the foundations of a secular national and peasant movement in Punjab in the 1920s and 30s. This was about the Ghadar movement. We will continue with the Indian National Movement course. Thank you.